In our headlines on this Tuesday, April 1st, here in South Korea. The Constitutional Court here in the country will announce its verdict on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment on April 4th. That is Friday this week at 11 in the morning. Meanwhile, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative is taking issue with South Korea's regulations on imported vehicles and its pricing of pharmaceutical products ahead of the Trump administration's announcement of reciprocal tariffs. And South Korea's exports expand over 3% on year in March to stand at over $58 billion as shipments of semiconductors remain strong despite rampant concerns over the broader impact of U.S. tariffs on global trade.
결연한 구국의 의지로 비상계엄을 선포하였습니다.
The Constitutional Court has finally announced a date for its much-awaited verdict on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young covers this latest development.
President Yoon Suk-yeol will face his fate on Friday as the Constitutional Court's decision on his impeachment is revealed via a live broadcast. The court notified the press on Tuesday that the 8-member bench will deliver its ruling at 11 a.m. on April 4th. The verdict will come 111 days after the National Assembly voted to impeach President Yoon, following his declaration of martial law on December 3rd last year. His case has marked the court's longest ever deliberation on a presidential case, compared to Presidents Roh Moo-hyun and Park Geun-hye's, which took at most 2 weeks. The prolonged timeline has sparked speculation about what is happening behind closed doors, with legal analysts divided over what the verdict could be. Removing a president requires at least 6 justices to uphold the National Assembly's impeachment. If 3 or more dissent, President Yoon returns to power. Some believe the justices have been working towards a unanimous decision, with foolproof reasoning to minimize societal backlash. Others suggest the court has been struggling to reach a consensus, as justices may be split ideologically. A recent impeachment case involving Korea Communications Commission Chair Lee Jin-suk ended in a 4-4 deadlock, in line with the justices' political orientations. According to legal circles, the bench is expected to reach their final decision either the evening before or on the morning of the ruling day, to maintain utmost confidentiality. If the decision is unanimous, the presiding justice typically reads a summary of the reasoning first, followed by their final written judgment. The ruling will inevitably have major political consequences, as an impeachment would trigger an early presidential election within 60 days. If Yoon is removed from office, the opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung is seen as the frontrunner for a snap election, far ahead of conservative candidates. Thus, conservatives and Yoon supporters continue to push for his impeachment to be dismissed, or for the case itself to be scrapped. In the meantime, a presidential official told reporters that Yoon's office is calmly awaiting the court's decision.
As the Constitutional Court prepares to deliver a historic ruling, it faces the formidable challenge of issuing a decision that commands legitimacy in a nation deeply divided along political lines. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In related news, rival political parties have welcomed the court's announcement of a date for its verdict on the president's political fate. The ruling People Power Party has pledged to accept the court's ruling while calling on the justices not to be swayed by pressure from the opposition party. Meanwhile, the opposition Democratic Party has asserted that the president's removal from office is the best way to end what it described as an insurrection. Acting President Han Duck-soo has vetoed an opposition-led revision to the Commercial Act that sought to broaden board duties to shareholders. At a cabinet meeting earlier on this Tuesday, Han added the expansion of corporate board members' duty to all shareholders could create chaos by disrupting decision-making procedures. He instead called for more in-depth discussions on the matter before seeking tangible reform. The opposition, for its part, has claimed the revision would force directors to act within the company's best interests, while the ruling party insists the revision would hinder corporate innovation. In other news, a recent report by the U.S. Office for Foreign Trade Policy is raising concern here in South Korea as the findings draw attention to what they claim are barriers. Our An Sung-jin explains.
The Trump administration is putting scrutiny on South Korea's trade barriers. The United States Trade Representative on Monday local time released a 7-page national trade estimate report, which stated that emissions-related regulations on imported vehicles and the pricing of pharmaceutical products remain a barrier to trade. The U.S.'s concerns came from a lack of transparency despite South Korea's Cleaner Conservation Act layout, and added that market entry for U.S. automotive manufacturers into South Korea remains a top priority. Korea's prioritization of local technology over foreign technology in defense procurement has also been labeled a barrier. In the case of the pharmaceutical and medical industry, the report said Korea lacks transparency and opportunity for stakeholders to input into proposed policy changes. It also noted Seoul's import ban on American beef from cattle aged 30 months or older, calling the restriction a transitional measure. Other trade barriers include digital trade barriers such as network usage fees that allegedly feed into a monopoly of internet service providers. The USTR releases an annual report to the President and Congress that documents obstacles for U.S. exporters and solutions, including efforts to overcome these barriers. Though these trade barriers have already been brought up in the past, with Trump's hardline tariff impositions, they seem more pertinent. South Korea's Trade Ministry pledged to closely analyze the trade barriers in the report and discuss these issues with relevant ministries and stakeholders to draft a response. The government also plans to consult with the U.S. through working-level channels to further explain Seoul's non-tariff measures. Trump's efforts to impose reciprocal tariffs will resume from the beginning of April. He has stated that further details will become clearer between the night of April 1st or 2nd Eastern Time. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's exports expanded for the second month in a row in March, gaining over 3% on year, backed by shipments of semiconductors. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin has details.
South Korea's exports grew for the second consecutive month in March amid mounting concerns over U.S. President Donald Trump's impending tariffs announcement. Data from the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Tuesday shows that the value of exports last month came to $58.2 billion, up 3.1% compared to the previous year. Korea's exports declined in January, ending a 15-month streak of on-year growth, but rebounded in February and showed an upward trend in March. This comes as outbound shipments of semiconductors, the country's top export item, rose nearly 12% on year, driven by strong demand for high-value memory semiconductors such as HBM and DDR5. Chip exports rebounded in March after showing negative growth in February and fell below the $10 billion mark after surpassing it for 9 consecutive months. Shipments of automobiles, another key export item, also increased for the second consecutive month as growth in shipments of hybrid gasoline and diesel vehicles continued from the previous month. And while exports of steel fell, an official from the government said that the drop was not due to the Trump administration's 25% aluminum and steel tariffs imposed last month.
Export volume has remained largely unchanged. Typically, there is a 2 to 3 months lag between signing a steel contract and the actual exporting, meaning the impact of tariffs on steel is yet to fully take effect.
Outbound shipments of aluminum, which were also subject to the 25% tariff, saw a more than 20% increase last month. But with additional duties including reciprocal tariffs and the 25% auto tariffs set to take effect this week, likely to bring greater trade uncertainties, the official said the government will provide export vouchers and expert consultation services for companies. The country's imports rose 2.3%, leading to a second straight month of trade surplus. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Most medical schools across the country are witnessing a significant return of their student body after more than a year of protests against government plans to expand the medical school admission quota. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
Out of 40 medical schools nationwide, students from 38 of the schools have decided to return to class before the Monday deadline imposed by the government. According to sources familiar with the matter, 38 of the medical schools saw almost all of their students who had been on leave of absence complete their registration to return to school. Among the schools that saw their students register for classes before the deadline were Seoul National University, Yonsei University, Korea University, Sungkyunkwan University, and Busan National University. The two medical schools where students hadn't registered before the deadline were Inje University and Halim University. The government last month set a March 31st deadline after it announced a conditional decision to set the medical school admissions quota at 3,058 for the 2026 academic year. That is similar to the figure before the current administration decided to increase admissions by 2,000 a year ago. In order to transition into the delayed school semester, most medical schools will begin with a few weeks of online classes. Seoul National University announced last week that online classes will be held for the first 1 to 2 weeks starting Monday. Ulsan University and Korea University have started online classes as well. Yonsei University, which was among the first medical schools to announce a full return of students, will conduct both online and offline classes. Based on data on the number of medical school students returning, the Ministry of Education will finalize the enrollment quota for next year's admissions by the end of the month. While the government expects the medical admissions quota to return to 3,058, it warned that the quota could return to 5,058 if students take a leave of absence or boycott classes after returning. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the government is setting aside an additional 22.6 billion won, roughly $15.4 million to aid relief efforts in Gyeongsang-Bukdo and Gyeongsang-Namdo provinces that suffered extensive damage from last week's wildfires, which were the worst on record. According to authorities on this Tuesday, more funds may be allocated if needed as recovery plans take visible shape. The total government support now stands at almost $21 million. These special grants will be used to clear debris, to support temporary housing and to implement safety measures to prevent secondary damage. Myanmar has declared a period of national mourning this week as the frantic search for survivors of its devastating earthquake continues. Our Park Gonu has more.
The landscape in Myanmar is marked by devastation with toppled temples and buildings. Rescue teams have been working around the clock for more than 3 days, desperately searching for more survivors beneath the rubble, hoping to save at least one more. The 7.7 magnitude earthquake that struck near Mandalay, Myanmar's second-largest city last Friday, has already claimed over 2,000 lives, with nearly 4,000 injured, according to the country's military government. But the U.S. Geological Survey estimates that the final death toll could exceed 10,000. In response to a rare plea for help from Myanmar's military junta, international rescue teams from neighboring countries, including China and several Southeast Asian countries, have arrived on the scene. But as the first 72 hours, the golden period for rescue have passed, and with scorching temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius, the chances of survival are diminishing rapidly.
The survival ability of the trapped people is getting weaker and weaker. The temperature is very high, making our rescue more and more difficult.
The U.S. also promised both monetary and rescue support for Myanmar on Monday.
The United States will provide up to $2 million through Burma-based humanitarian assistance organization. A U.S. aid team of humanitarian experts based in the region are traveling to Burma now to identify the people's most pressing needs.
Other countries, including South Korea, the UK, and Australia, have also announced millions of dollars in aid. Amid the rescue efforts, the military junta declared a week-long national mourning period until Sunday, with flags flown at half-mast. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
And amid ongoing geopolitical tensions, U.S. President Donald Trump claims there has been contact with North Korea's Kim Jong-un in recent times. Our correspondent Kim Jong-shil covers his most recent remarks.
Could there be a part 2 in the Trump-Kim romance? At the White House on Monday local time, President Trump said his relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has come a long way since their rocky start.
I have a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un. Now, you people hate to hear that, but it's very important. It started off very rough, very nasty. Little rocket man, the whole thing was a nasty deal. And then one day we got a call that they'd like to meet. We met.
Trump confirmed that the U.S. is communicating with the regime and hinted at future action, though he didn't specify what that might look like.
There is communication, yeah. I think it's very important. You know, he's a big nuclear nation, and he's a very smart guy, but I have a very good relationship with him. Yeah, we'll probably do something at some point.
Experts question whether this renewed approach can lead to a breakthrough, especially as North Korea's nuclear capabilities have advanced since their 2019 summit.
President Trump is focusing on key issues where he can achieve tangible foreign policy successes during his short term, and North Korea is likely one of the areas he sees as crucial.
While diplomatic efforts may continue, Dr. Hong points out that North Korea's nuclear advances remain a significant barrier to progressing talks. Analysts suggest the U.S. is adjusting its strategy accordingly.
Trump's second term signals a shift toward arms control with North Korea, moving away from the goal of complete denuclearization. With North Korea's continued development of ICBMs, the focus is now on negotiating to reduce the threat to the U.S.
Experts added that North Korea's growing ties with Russia, China, and Iran could complicate future negotiations. With the stakes now higher, the attention will be on Trump's next move, as his unpredictable approach could lead to unexpected outcomes. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And on the local cultural front, Paik Nam-june was an influential artist of his time, known for his pioneering video art using television sets. For those of you hoping to delve into his artistic depictions, a gallery bearing his name is scheduled to start a relevant showcase this month. Our Yoon reports.
On New Year's Day of 1984, the first international satellite art installation was presented by Korean-American artist Paik Nam-june. Setting out to counter George Orwell's depressing portrayal of television in the novel 1984, the live broadcast of the satellite art production from New York was simultaneously aired in Korea, and the live broadcast from Paris was also aired in real time to Germany. Featuring pop music videos, dance, and video art, the piece, called Good Morning, Mr. Orwell, combined live and taped segments along with TV graphics designed by Paik himself. The breakthrough attempt of its time was an astounding success, reaching an audience of over 25 million viewers worldwide. Painting with his hair, or dragging a violin through the streets, then setting it on fire, Paik Nam-june broke stereotypes with his eccentricity. Paik's robot K456, first displayed in 1964, was his first work that took shape of a robot, which opened questions of humanity amid advancing technology.
He was an artist that suggested how new technology could change the world. Above all, he made such predictions from such a euphoric and optimistic perspective.
Paik Nam-june shifted away from the traditional ideas and pioneered a new genre called video art by breaking down the boundaries between technology and art. In the 1970s, when black and white analog TVs were still the norm, Paik was ahead of his time, as if he had an insight into the hyper-connected era we live in today.
The most internationally famous K-culture content before Psy was that of Paik Nam-june. As a future-thinking artist, he very insightfully showed how society would change with the development of technology and what the roles of artists in communication will be in that world.
Efforts to display Paik Nam-june's journey have been underway for years. And for this year, the first was an exhibition at the Museum of Contemporary Art Busan that ended on March 16th. It was the largest exhibition since Paik's death and was visited by 122,000 visitors. The Nam-june Paik Art Center continues to hold events and exhibitions to showcase the artist's experimental mindset. Many are interested to see how Paik Nam-june's ideas were realized with the help of his collaborators.
The role that Baek played was like the conductor of an orchestra. Under his direction were very, very talented collaborators who came together to produce these projects, and their passion and efforts have been documented.
The Play It Again Baek exhibition will feature recordings of his past interviews. It will open on April 10th at the Nam-june Baek Art Center and run into next year. The 2023 film titled Nam-june Baek, The Moon is the Oldest TV is screening at the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art as part of its Moment of Creation, The Artist's Studio, a collection of 8 films that show artists creating new works. This program will run until May 24th. 이은진, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Foreign ministers from 6 European countries convened in Madrid, where they urged Russia to agree to an immediate, unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine. The foreign ministers of Germany, France, Italy, Poland, Spain, and the United Kingdom, along with the European Union's High Representative, met in Madrid on Monday local time to address the war in Ukraine. In a joint statement, they collectively urged Russia to abandon its delaying tactics and respond to Ukraine's commitment to peace by agreeing to an unconditional, full ceasefire. The statement highlighted the importance of making progress within a specific time frame, and they also considered possible new sanctions to increase pressure on Russia. The possibility of using frozen Russian sovereign assets to aid Ukraine was also discussed. The ministers said they will ensure Russia's full accountability for its war crimes. In France, leader of the right-wing National Rally Party and presidential hopeful Marine Le Pen has been convicted of embezzlement and barred from running in the 2027 presidential election. Le Pen has denounced the court's decision as politically motivated and says she will appeal the ruling.
What she is doing here is she's saying, I'm going to make you ineligible straight away, and I'm doing it precisely to stop you from being able to be elected president. If that's not a political decision, I don't know what it is.
On Monday local time, a French court found Le Pen guilty of embezzling European Union funds. The court sentenced her to 4 years in prison with 2 years suspended, imposed a $108,000 fine, and prohibited her from holding public office for 5 years. This ruling effectively disqualifies her from the 2027 presidential race. Finally, in Japan, Tokyo's cherry blossom season has arrived earlier than usual this year, with full bloom observed over the weekend. The early arrival drew large crowds to popular hanami, or flower viewing spots, across the city on Monday. Parks and gardens throughout Tokyo are experiencing peak bloom, attracting locals and tourists to the seasonal festivities. While cherry blossoms usually reach their peak in late March to early April, the early blooming this year is attributed to warmer temperatures. The country's favorite flower reaching the peak usually signals the start of the new school and business year. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
It was chilly in the morning, but it turned warm in the middle of the day today, leading to a difference between the daily highs and lows. Tomorrow will be very similar to today, with Seoul at 5 degrees Celsius in the morning and 16 degrees during the day. Please dress in layers to avoid catching a cold. Along with the warm spring weather, fine dust has also returned. Dust is building up due to the influx of fine dust from overseas overnight. Ultrafine dust will cover the skies in the Seoul metropolitan area and Chungcheongnam-do province tomorrow. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at 1 degree and Daejeon at 3 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 18 degrees in Daejeon, Gwangju, and Daegu, 17 degrees in Chuncheon. Starting from the Seoul metropolitan area tomorrow afternoon, spring rain will fall throughout the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.